I don't know why I'm saying this. Maybe because if I don't, I start to doubt myself. Maybe because I need to see the words spoken to believe them. This morning I was sitting at the breakfast table, still half asleep, when my husband, Michael Parker, demanded my credit card. Not for him. Oh no. It was meant for his sister, Jessica, because apparently she needed a little extra help this month. Never mind that she hasn't worked in over a year. Never mind that every time she borrowed money, it magically turned into a gift. I said no. That was it. Just a simple, exhausted no because I'd had enough. And Michael, my husband, the man who once swore to love and protect me, picked up his glass of orange juice and threw it in my face. The cold liquid splashed into my eyes, stung my skin, dripped down my hair and pajamas. For a second, I couldn't even move. Couldn't breathe. Then he stood up, chair scraping against the floor, and said, "Give her the damn card or get out." Then he left for work. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I sat there at the table, sticky and humiliated, staring at the half-empty glass like it could somehow explain how I got here. How I became this person, this woman whose husband thinks she's an ATM, an inconvenience, something to be controlled and discarded. And then something in me snapped. I don't even remember making the decision. I just stood up, walked to the bedroom, and grabbed a suitcase. I packed fast. Clothes, toiletries, my passport, birth certificate, everything I could fit. My hands were shaking, but my heart was racing in a way I hadn't felt in years. By the time I zipped up the bag, I knew there was no going back. I left the house without a second glance. Now I'm sitting in my car, parked outside a cafe, hands still trembling as I type this. I don't know what's next, but I know one thing for sure. I'm never going back. I'm still shaking. Not from fear, well, maybe a little from fear, but mostly from the sheer adrenaline of it all. I actually did it. I left. I walked out of that house, out of that marriage, out of the life I thought I had no choice but to endure. And now, sitting in my car in some random cafe parking lot, I feel weightless. Like a balloon that finally slipped free from the hand that kept yanking it back down. But here's the thing no one tells you about leaving an abusive marriage. The real terror doesn't hit until afterward. I spent the first hour just sitting in my car, phone in my lap, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. My hair was still damp with orange juice. My shirt had dried into a sticky mess. And yet, I couldn't make myself move. Because leaving wasn't the hard part. The hard part was figuring out what the hell comes next. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Rachel. Rachel Adams has been my best friend since college. She was the maid of honor at my wedding. The person who stayed up late with me, drinking cheap wine and making fun of rom-coms, long before my life became something I would have cried over in a movie. And the worst part? She knew. She knew things were bad. She knew Michael controlled me, dismissed me, made me feel like I was barely a person some days. But she never pushed, not in the way that made me feel trapped between defending him or losing her. Instead, she waited. Waited for me to see it. Waited for me to finally say, I need help. When she picked up the phone, I didn't even have to explain. Where are you? She asked immediately. Some parking lot, I croaked. My throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming, even though I hadn't said a single word since I left. Come to my place. No hesitation. No questions. I'll put on coffee. Stay as long as you need. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Are you sure? Rachel scoffed. Emily, you could show up with an entire crime scene in your trunk, and I'd still tell you to come over. Just get here, okay? So I did. I drove through streets I barely remembered, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. I was halfway there when my phone lit up with a call from Michael. I let it ring. Then another call. And another. Then came the texts. Michael, where the hell are you? Are you seriously acting like a child over this? You'd better be home when I get back. Don't make me come find you. The last one sent a shiver down my spine. Because it wasn't a threat, not exactly. Michael was too smart for that. But I knew him. I knew the way he worked, the way he chipped away at me piece by piece until I was too exhausted to fight back. I turned my phone off. By the time I pulled into Rachel's driveway, I was barely holding it together. She must have been waiting by the door because she was outside before I even unbuckled my seatbelt. The moment I stepped out of the car, she pulled me into a hug so tight I thought I might break apart entirely. "You're safe," she murmured. "You're safe now." That's when I lost it. I don't remember crying, not in all the years Michael belittled me, controlled me, made me feel like I was nothing. But standing there in Rachel's arms, with the realization crashing over me that I was finally free, the dam broke. She didn't say anything. Just held me until the sobs slowed, then guided me inside. Her house was warm, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and the lingering scent of lavender from a candle burning on the counter. It felt like stepping into another world, one where people didn't throw drinks at you, didn't scream at you for being too much or not enough at the same time. Rachel sat me down on the couch and handed me a mug of coffee. "Start at the beginning," she said gently. So I told her. Everything. The orange juice, the ultimatum, the way I just left like I was walking out of a burning building. And as I spoke, the memories came in waves. I told her about the time Michael canceled my doctor's appointment because he didn't feel like driving me. The time he made fun of the dress I bought for our anniversary dinner and forced me to change. The time he screamed at me for being dramatic after I cried when my dad died. The time he threw my phone out the car window because I didn't answer fast enough. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking so badly that Rachel had to take the coffee mug from me before I spilled it. "Emily." Her voice was quiet, but there was rage beneath it. "You know this isn't just him being an asshole, right? This is abuse." I exhaled shakily. "I know." And I did. "I think I always knew." Rachel grabbed my hand. "You're not going back." I nodded. "I don't want to." "Good. Because I already texted Megan. Megan Cooper. Divorce lawyer. Badass. The woman Rachel once said could make a man willingly sign away his soul in a settlement agreement. "She's expecting your call," Rachel said. "And we're getting you a restraining order." A part of me still felt like I was floating, like I wasn't really here, like this was happening to someone else. But then Rachel squeezed my hand, grounding me. "You're free," she said. And for the first time in years, I actually believed it. The first night at Rachel's house, I didn't sleep. I tried. God, I tried. I curled up in the guest room, in a bed softer than any I'd slept in for years, surrounded by the quiet hum of a house that wasn't filled with tension, with footsteps I had to brace myself for, with the weight of walking on eggshells. And yet, every time I closed my eyes, I heard Michael's voice in my head. "Where the hell are you? You'd better be home when I get back. Don't make me come find you." I turned my phone off, but it didn't matter. The words were burned into my skull. I kept expecting the sound of tires on the driveway, the sharp knock on the door, the familiar sinking in my stomach that came with knowing I had no way out. Except this time I did. And that was what finally allowed me to drift into a restless, uneasy sleep. The next morning, Rachel didn't push me to talk. Instead, she made breakfast, actual breakfast, not the rushed half-bites I used to eat standing up in my kitchen while making sure Michael's meal was plated just the way he liked it. She made scrambled eggs, toast, bacon, fresh coffee. And when she put the plate in front of me, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't hungry, but because for years, I'd only ever eaten what was left. Michael always got his plate first. Always picked what he wanted. It became second nature to take what remained, to not be an inconvenience. Rachel must have seen something on my face because she nudged my coffee toward me. "Eat. I won't be offended if you like the eggs better than the toast." That broke me a little. Because it wasn't just about food. It was about the fact that, for the first time in years, someone wanted me to have something. No conditions. No punishment. So I ate. And then Rachel pulled out her laptop and got down to business. "Okay," she said, fingers already flying across the keys. "We need to figure out your next steps. Megan can meet us today." I already gave her a rundown, and she's ready to file for divorce and a restraining order. But we also need to think about where you're gonna stay long-term. My stomach dropped. I don't want to be a burden. Rachel slammed her laptop shut so fast I jumped. "I swear to God, if you ever say that again, I will throw this coffee at you. I blinked. Emily, she said, softer now, you've spent years being told that you take up too much space. That you're too much or not enough. That you owe something to someone just for existing. But you don't owe me a damn thing. You're my best friend. You're my family. You can stay here as long as you need to. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. Rachel gave me a look. You're gonna cry, aren't you? No, I lied. She grinned. Good, because Megan is terrifying, and I need you to be in the right headspace for our meeting. Megan Cooper was exactly as intimidating as Rachel had promised. She met us at her office, a sleek, modern space that smelled like coffee and expensive lawsuits. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, no-nonsense, dressed in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. The second I sat down, she slid a folder across the desk. I've already drafted the divorce papers and the emergency restraining order, she said, like we were discussing picking out curtains instead of dismantling my marriage. I need you to review everything and sign where indicated. We'll file today. I stared at the folder. It looked so simple. Just a stack of papers. Ink on a page. But my entire life was in there. My past. My present. And the moment I signed, my future. Rachel reached under the desk and squeezed my knee. So I picked up the pen. And I signed. Megan nodded approvingly. Good. Now, let's talk logistics. Has he contacted you since you left? I swallowed. A few texts before I turned my phone off. Turn it back on, she instructed. I hesitated. Megan, He's going to escalate, she said bluntly. Abusive men don't take losing control well. And when they realize their power is slipping, they lash out. I need documentation. Every message. Every voicemail. Every attempt to intimidate you. My hands trembled as I turned my phone back on. It buzzed immediately. Michael, 15 missed calls. Michael, 10 new messages. I didn't even have to open them to know what they said. It would start with charm. With come home, we can talk, you're overreacting. Then the anger. The accusations. The threats hidden beneath carefully chosen words. Megan held out her hand. Give it to me. I handed over my phone. She scrolled through the messages, expression unreadable. Then she sighed. Textbook. Rachel crossed her arms. Can we do anything about it? We can use it for the restraining order. Megan glanced at me. He's going to try and manipulate you, Emily. He'll apologize. He'll promise to change. He'll make you feel guilty. Don't fall for it. I nodded, but a part of me still felt hollow. Because as much as I knew what Michael was, there was a piece of me that had spent years making excuses for him. Megan studied me. Then her voice softened. You did the right thing by leaving. I exhaled shakily. Then why do I feel like I'm about to fall apart? Because you spent years in survival mode. She leaned forward. And now, for the first time, you don't have to survive. You get to live. Rachel drove us home in silence, letting me process everything. And as I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city blur past, I realized something. I had no idea what came next. I had no plan beyond getting away. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what the future held. Because for the first time in years, the future was mine. I knew Michael wouldn't take it well. I knew the moment he saw those divorce papers, he'd explode. But nothing could have prepared me for just how far he'd go. The restraining order was granted quickly. Megan didn't seem surprised. Judges don't like men who throw drinks in their wives' faces, she said dryly as she slid the papers across the desk. This will make it illegal for him to contact you in any way. No calls, no texts, no emails, nothing. If he so much as breathes in your direction, we can have him arrested. I stared at the paper, my name printed in bold letters, right above Michael's. I was free. Legally, at least. Rachel took me out to lunch afterward to celebrate, but I barely touched my food. My appetite had disappeared the moment Megan mentioned that Michael would be served that afternoon. Because I knew what would happen next. Michael wasn't the type of man to accept things. He was the type to fight, to manipulate, to push every possible boundary until he got his way. And sure enough, that evening, the texts started again. despite the legally binding order telling him he wasn't allowed to contact me. I sat on Rachel's couch, my phone in my lap, watching the messages come in one by one. Michael, what the fuck is this? You're really doing this? You wanna be a single, broke, lonely loser? Be my guest. But you don't get to just walk away, Emily. You owe me a conversation. I locked my phone. Megan was right. He's escalating. Rachel grabbed my phone and took a screenshot. We're sending all of this to Megan. Should I respond? Rachel looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Absolutely the hell not. I exhaled. I don't know, Rachel. A part of me feels like if I just explain things to him, No. She cut me off immediately. You don't explain yourself to your abuser. You don't owe him that. You don't owe him anything. She was right. But that didn't stop the guilt from creeping in. Even after everything, there was a part of me, some twisted, conditioned part, that felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I was betraying him. Michael had spent years making me feel like I was his problem to fix. His possession. His responsibility. And now that I was choosing myself instead of him, it felt like I was breaking something. But maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Maybe some things deserve to be broken. By the next morning, the messages had stopped. Which, honestly, was more terrifying than if they'd continued. Rachel didn't like it either. He's planning something, she said as she poured herself another cup of coffee. Michael doesn't just go silent. I nodded. I know. Megan had already forwarded everything to the judge. She was pushing for further legal action since Michael had blatantly ignored the restraining order within hours of being served. But I knew Michael. And if there was one thing he hated more than losing control, it was looking like a fool. So it wasn't too surprising when, later that evening, he showed up. Rachel and I were sitting on the couch, watching TV, when the doorbell rang. We froze. It was almost 9 p.m. Nobody just dropped by Rachel's house unannounced. Rachel grabbed her phone and checked the security app connected to her front door camera. Then she swore. It's Michael. My stomach dropped. What? Rachel turned her phone so I could see the screen. There he was. Standing on the porch, hands shoved into his pockets, staring straight into the camera like he knew we were watching. Rachel immediately started recording. He knows there's a restraining order, right? He knows. My hands were shaking. He doesn't care. Michael knocked. Hard. Then he spoke, voice eerily calm. Emily, I know you're in there. I sucked in a sharp breath. Rachel's fingers hovered over her phone. We can call the cops right now. I didn't answer. I was too busy staring at the screen, watching my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, waiting patiently on the porch like he hadn't just violated a court order. Emily, he tried again. I just want to talk. Rachel snorted. Oh, sure, let's have a chat right before I call 911. Michael shifted, exhaling heavily. You don't have to do this. Do what, exactly? Save myself? Refuse to let him destroy me? I stayed silent. Rachel, however, had had enough. She marched to the front door, unlocked it, and cracked it open just enough to be heard. You're breaking the law, Michael. His entire demeanor shifted. He grinned. Rachel, good to see you. Wish I could say the same. Now get the hell off my property before I have you arrested. Michael chuckled. Arrested? For what? Visiting my wife? Rachel stepped outside, closing the door behind her so I wouldn't have to face him directly. And even though I couldn't see her face, I knew she was giving him the look. The same look she gave guys at bars when they got too close. The look that said, I will ruin your life if you push me. The restraining order says you're not allowed here, she said. It says you're not allowed to contact Emily. That means no texts, no calls, no showing up unannounced. And guess what? You did all three. Michael's smirk faltered. She won't even talk to me? Not unless it's through her lawyer. That's bullshit. No, Michael, Rachel shot back. You're bullshit. Michael inhaled sharply. Then he leaned in, lowering his voice. Tell Emily she's making a mistake. Rachel didn't flinch. I'll tell her to send me a picture of your mugshot after they haul your ass away. Michael clenched his jaw. For a moment, I thought he might actually do something. But then he took a step back. Another. And then, without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. Rachel waited until he was gone, then walked back inside and immediately called Megan. Guess who just violated the restraining order again? Michael thinks this is a game. He thinks if he pushes hard enough, if he scares me just enough, I'll come back. But he doesn't realize something. The fear isn't working anymore. Because I'm not afraid of him. Not anymore. I woke up to a message from Megan. Michael was officially served with a court summons this morning. Violating a restraining order is a criminal offense. If he so much as blinks in your direction, we'll have him arrested. I reread it 3 times, letting it sink in. Michael was losing control. And men like him don't handle losing well. Rachel and I spent the morning strategizing. Well, she did. I just sat at the kitchen table, trying to convince myself I wasn't about to throw up. You should expect a tantrum, Rachel said, pacing. The second he realizes he can't intimidate you, he'll bring out the big guns. Guilt. Manipulation. Maybe even tears. I swallowed hard. Tears. She nodded. Michael will try anything to make you second-guess yourself. But it won't work. Because you have me, you have Megan, and... The doorbell rang. Rachel's face darkened. She grabbed her phone and checked the security feed. Her jaw clenched. Tell me it's not him, I whispered. It's worse. She turned the screen toward me. Standing on the porch, arms crossed, was Michael. And beside him, smirking like she had already won, was Jessica. Rachel didn't waste a second. She called Megan, putting her on speaker. Your favorite client is here, Rachel said. Megan sighed. Of course he is. And he brought Jessica. Even better. Megan sounded unimpressed. You know the drill. Don't engage. Just call the cops. Rachel smirked. Oh, we're not calling anyone yet. Because guess what? You're already here. Megan laughed. I love you both. I'm on my way. Then she hung up. I stared at Rachel. You didn't tell me Megan was coming over today. I didn't think I had to. She checked the time. She should be here in 5 minutes. Jessica knocked again. Emily, open up. We just want to talk. I took a deep breath. Not my problem. Not my battle. Not my life anymore. I stayed seated. Rachel, on the other hand, had a different idea. She marched to the front door, yanked it open, and leaned casually against the door frame. Michael immediately stepped forward, but Rachel held up a finger. Restraining order, remember? This little stunt could land you in jail. Michael clenched his jaw but didn't move. Jessica, however, scoffed. Are you serious? He's just trying to fix his marriage. Rachel raised an eyebrow. By stalking his ex-wife? Jessica rolled her eyes. Emily needs to stop acting like a victim and talk to her husband. Rachel barked out a laugh. Oh, this is rich. Jessica, the professional mooch, coming here to defend her meal ticket. Jessica's eyes flashed. I don't need Michael's money. Rachel feigned shock. Oh, so you paid off your credit card debt yourself? Because last I checked, Emily's card was covering that. Jessica's smirk faltered. Michael finally spoke. I just want 5 minutes with Emily. Rachel tilted her head. So you can do what? Beg? Cry? Call her a stupid bitch when she doesn't agree with you. Michael's hands curled into fists. And that's when Megan's car pulled up. She parked in the driveway, stepped out in her tailored navy blue suit, and grinned. Michael, she said cheerfully, I was hoping I'd get to see you today. Michael's face paled. You can't just. Oh, but I can. Megan pulled out a folder. See, I have a little gift for you. It's a formal motion to hold you in contempt of court for violating the restraining order. Again. Jessica snorted. Oh, please. No judge is going to. Actually, Megan interrupted, Judge Hendricks is overseeing this case. You know, the one who hates men who harass women? The one who will happily see Michael spend a few nights in jail? Jessica's mouth snapped shut. Michael took a step forward, lowering his voice. Megan, come on. Be reasonable. Megan didn't even blink. Oh, you want reasonable? Reasonable was Emily staying with you for years while you treated her like garbage. Reasonable was her giving you chance after chance while you used her like a personal piggy bank. Reasonable was her walking away without pressing charges. Michael's jaw tightened. Unfortunately for you, Megan continued, I am not a reasonable woman. Jessica groaned. So what, you're just going to drag this out in court? Megan smiled sweetly. You think this will drag out? Honey, this is going to be fast. Emily has the receipts, I have the legal team, and Michael has a problem. Michael glared at me through the doorway. You really want this, Emily? He asked. I met his gaze and felt nothing. No fear. No doubt. No hesitation. Yes, I said simply. Michael exhaled sharply, then turned to Jessica. Let's go. Jessica scoffed. Are you serious? Now, Jessica. For the first time, she didn't argue. They left without another word. Rachel closed the door and hooped. Oh my God, Megan, that was beautiful. Megan smirked. I do my best work in driveways. I exhaled, still gripping the edge of the table. So, what now? Now, Megan said, we file this latest violation. And then we move on to the fun part. Rachel grinned. Fun part? The divorce hearing. Megan winked at me. Michael thinks he's gonna come out of this unscathed. He won't. I swallowed. Are you sure? Emily, Megan said, leaning down so we were eye level. Men like him only win if women like you stay silent. I took a deep breath. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel silent anymore. It's been 2 weeks since Michael and Jessica showed up at Rachel's house. 2 weeks since Megan handed Michael a legal beatdown on the front porch. 2 weeks since I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. And in those 2 weeks, I've realized something I never expected. I don't know who I am without Michael. For years, my life revolved around him, his moods, his needs, his wants. I adapted to survive. I learned how to make myself small so I wouldn't set him off. I measured my worth by how well I could avoid a fight. And now that he's gone, I don't know how to function. The first few days were a blur of paperwork and court dates. Megan kept me busy with legal documents, making sure every single detail was handled. She wasn't just aiming for a clean break, she was going for total annihilation. And she got it. Michael fought at first, but he lost every battle. The judge sided with me. The restraining order was reinforced with stricter terms. Megan even convinced the court to freeze our shared assets so he couldn't drain our accounts out of spite. By the end of it, Michael looked defeated. But I knew better. He wasn't the kind of man who accepted loss. He was the kind of man who stewed in it, waiting for an opening. Still, I didn't care. Because for the first time in forever, I was free. Rachel has been incredible through all of this. She lets me stay as long as I need. She keeps me distracted. She forces me to go on walks, to eat regular meals, to remember what it's like to exist outside of survival mode. You're like a hostage experiencing sunlight for the first time, she joked one morning, handing me a smoothie. I snorted. Yeah, well, the adjustment period is rough. She sat down across from me. You know you don't have to rush this, right? You don't have to have everything figured out right now. I sighed, stirring my drink with the straw. I just don't know what I'm supposed to do. Rachel tilted her head. What do you want to do? I blinked. And then I realized. I had no idea. I had spent so much time wrapped up in Michael's world, catering to his expectations, that I had no idea what I wanted anymore. Rachel must have seen something shift in my expression, because she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's okay, she said. You get to figure it out now. A week later, I got a job. Nothing fancy. Just a part-time gig at a local bookstore. It was quiet. Low stress. No demanding bosses or looming deadlines. And most importantly, Michael would hate it. He used to roll his eyes whenever I talked about my love for books. He'd call them a waste of time, saying I should be focused on real responsibilities instead of getting lost in stories. So the second I saw the "Help Wanted" sign in the window, I walked in and applied. The owner, a sweet older woman named Carol, hired me on the spot. You look like someone who needs a fresh start, she said. She had no idea how right she was. The first day, I was terrified. I kept expecting Michael to burst in and humiliate me, to sneer at me from across the counter, to mock me for daring to enjoy something, But he never came. Instead, I spent the afternoon stocking shelves, recommending books, and drinking coffee without fear of judgment. And by the end of my shift, I felt normal. It was such a simple thing. A normal job. A normal day. But for me, it was revolutionary. Because for the first time in forever, my life wasn't dictated by Michael's moods. It was mine. One night, Rachel and I sat on the back porch, drinking wine. "You're smiling more," she said, nudging me. I huffed. "I smile plenty. Not like this." She leaned back against the chair, watching me. "So, how does it feel?" I exhaled. "Weird." She grinned. "Good weird or bad weird?" I thought about it. About the bookstore. About waking up without anxiety curling in my stomach. About the way I could breathe again. "Good weird," I admitted. Rachel beamed. "That's what I like to hear." We clinked glasses, and for the first time, I let myself believe it. I was going to be okay. A few days later, I started writing again. It wasn't much. Just a few messy paragraphs in a notebook. But it was something. Michael used to hate when I wrote. He'd tell me it was childish. A waste of time. So I stopped. But now? Now, I let myself create again. The words weren't perfect. The sentences were clunky. But they were mine. And that was enough. Rachel sat me down over coffee a week later. "Okay," she said, "we need to talk about the next step." I raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "Your own place." I stiffened. Rachel held up her hands. "No pressure. You can stay here as long as you want. But I can tell you're getting restless. You're ready for more." I swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can afford it yet." "You're working," she pointed out. "And Megan said the divorce settlement is looking very promising." I hesitated. "I'm scared." "I know." Rachel reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "But you can do this. And I'll help you every step of the way." I took a shaky breath. And for the first time, I let myself imagine it. A place of my own. A home that belonged only to me. No Michael. No fear. No eggshells to walk on. Just me. Just freedom. I smiled. "Let's do it." Rachel grinned. Hell yes. For the first time in forever, I was taking control of my life. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't afraid of the future. Because it was mine now. And I wasn't going to waste it. I moved into my apartment today. It's small. Nothing fancy. A one-bedroom with creaky floors and an outdated kitchen. But when I turned the key and stepped inside, I nearly broke down crying. Because it's mine. The last few weeks have been a whirlwind. The divorce was finalized quicker than I expected, thanks to Megan being an absolute force of nature. Michael tried to fight it, of course he did, but the judge didn't have an ounce of sympathy for a man who violated a restraining order multiple times. Megan called me the day it was finalized, her voice triumphant. "It's done," she said. "You're officially divorced." I had been sitting on Rachel's couch at the time, my hands clenched into fists, my heart racing. And then I exhaled. A long, deep breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. Michael was officially out of my life. I wasn't his anymore. I was mine. The settlement was better than I ever dreamed. Michael tried to keep everything, but Megan fought like hell. She got me what I was owed, half the assets, my car, and a financial cushion that gave me enough to start over. Rachel practically threw a party when she heard the news. "You can get your own place now," she said, bouncing on the couch like a kid on Christmas morning. I laughed, but there was still a small part of me that was scared. Living at Rachel's had been safe. Comfortable. She never made me feel like a burden, never rushed me to leave. But she was right. It was time. I spent a week apartment hunting. Rachel came with me to every showing, armed with coffee and brutally honest opinions. "This one smells like feet," she announced at one place. "The landlord here looks like he commits tax fraud," she muttered at another. Then, finally, we found it. A small apartment above a bookstore. The second I walked in, I knew. It wasn't much. The floors were scuffed, and the paint was peeling in places. But the windows let in so much light, and best of all, it had a little built-in nook that was perfect for writing. Rachel looked at me and grinned. "This is the one, isn't it?" I nodded, my throat tight. Moving day was chaos. Rachel recruited half her family to help, and her brother nearly dropped my couch down the stairs. But by the end of the day, everything was in. Boxes stacked in the corner. My tiny bed pushed against the wall. The bookshelf I had bought for my own books standing proudly by the window. Rachel flopped onto my couch, exhausted. We did it. I sat next to her, looking around. My home. No Michael. No fear. Just me. And for the first time in forever, I felt at peace. A week later, I started writing seriously again. At first, it was just a few sentences here and there. Then a paragraph. Then pages. And before I knew it, I was filling notebooks. Michael always told me writing was a waste of time. That I was living in a fantasy if I thought I could ever do something with it. But I don't hear his voice anymore. Now, I only hear mine. Rachel came over last night, bringing wine and takeout to celebrate my first week in my new place. We sat on the floor, eating straight from the containers, laughing about nothing. And then Rachel looked at me, suddenly serious. "You're happy," she said. I blinked. "What?" She repeated. "You look happy. I haven't seen you look like this in years." I hesitated. Because she was right. I was happy. It wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was quiet. Steady. A feeling I could settle into. I smiled. "Yeah. I think I am." Rachel beamed. "Damn right you are." We raised our glasses, toasting to new beginnings. To freedom. To me. This morning, I woke up early and made coffee. I sat by my window, watching the sun rise over the city, my notebook open on my lap. And for the first time in years, I felt excited for the future. Because it was mine. And it was limitless.